Hello and welcome to Mindset, Money, Success. And I'm your host, Loraine Marshall. And today I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm actually going to read a part of my book, which I am due to publish very soon. The title of that book is After the Discard, No Divorce Required. And the discard is where it's a very sudden termination of a relationship where you had no idea that relationship was going to end. So this episode, I'm going to look at the living together laws in the UK and Spain and look at the domestic abuse and gender violence laws for these countries. Before we get into that, I have a short promotion for school.
Hello, it's Loraine here. And before we get into today's podcast, let me tell you about school. It's the all-in-one platform that coaches, trainers and creators like us use to share content, engage our audience and build recurring revenue. Whether you're through free membership or paid subscriptions, think $10 to $50 a month or even high-ticket upsells. School makes it stupidly simple. There's highly engaged communities, no more ghost towns. Charge monthly or keep it free, you decide. Zero hidden fees. It's just $99 a month after your first 14-day free trial, and you can cancel at any time. Unlimited members, courses and content, all with mobile app to keep your community connected. And the best part, you own the relationship. No algorithms burying your posts, just your people, your content, your revenue. Are you ready to build your empire? You can grab a free trial and I'll drop the link in the show notes or below the video. Let's get you paid for what you already know.
Living together laws in the UK and Spain. The cohabitation statistics for the UK. The obvious trend is for more and more couples to live together without getting married. Cohabiting couple families were the second largest family type at 3.5 million, followed by lone parent families at 2.9 million. And these statistics are provided by trendmonitor.co.uk from February 2020. The laws that offer no protection for couples and particularly disadvantaged women in cohabiting relationships. Married couples who divorce can have their property legally divided. Unmarried couples do not have the same rights without proof of ownership. So, for example, one partner, usually the man, is named on the deeds to the house, and the other party, the woman, is not, but she has contributed in some way over the years. If they split up, she has no legal protection. There is no automatic right to inheritance unless a will is being created. There are also no rights to pension between cohabiting couples. So what protection is available? 1. Couples can have a cohabitation agreement drawn up. 2. When purchasing a property together, you could ensure that both names are on the deeds of the family home or draw up a declaration of trust if ownership is to be in unequal shares. 3. Taking out life insurance and creating a will is also a good idea. When couples meet and decide to move in together, the last thing that you are thinking about is what will happen if you separate, or if one partner should die unexpectedly. But this conversation should take place. It is very important to be clear on what is intended when you are forming a new cohabiting relationship. If you do not put some simple protections in place at the start of the relationship, can leave one or both partners in precarious situation. As in my case, despite the ex-partner declaring the property to be our first home and him making his will to ensure I would have some protection if he died unexpectedly, I was not named on the deeds. When he terminated the relationship the way he did and left me floundering in Spain in the property he had purchased for our retirement together, I was in a precarious position as soon as he threatened me with eviction. He had been responsible for paying the bills at the property, most of which were on direct debits from his bank account, even though he offered what he termed gifts. In his financial settlement letter, nothing he offered was given and nothing was legally signed. He had the power and control of that. However, because of his inability to actually have an adult conversation, he ended up being responsible for the utilities, house tax, and insurance at the property after he left in September 2020. Now, in Spain, I was told by the gender violence organisation that an owner cannot terminate the utilities at the property, and even if it was occupied by squatters. And this is something that happened in 2023 because the utilities were terminated. Now, I did manage to reinstate the electricity at the property, but unfortunately, even after I was advised to make another gender violence complaint, the courts and the judge did not reinstate the water. Even though I tried with the water company, they told me only a judge can order the water to be turned back on. So I was left in that property without water from mid-2023 until January 2026, when I was able to relocate to another region in Spain. So due to his refusal to negotiate or help with paying an advance payment to redeem a UK mortgage on a property that was rented, I was left in a financial predicament. This may not have been too much to bear, but the stark realization of his abusive behaviour, the sudden termination of our relationship, and then understanding that I had been involved with a man that showed no empathy, no compassion, and then blamed me for the situation that he left me in. That caused me more emotional trauma than anything else. I was coming to terms with the fact of having been in an emotionally, psychologically abusive relationship. That hurt me deeply, as memories of the twisted things he did and said would pop into my mind. His cruel, hurtful verbal outbursts, the sadistic sexual acts that I was manipulated and conditioned to accept. It was all too much. I was close to a complete emotional breakdown on a number of occasions in the weeks and months that followed his departure from the villa. So what are the issues that couples need to consider? Talking about and planning for your future doesn't mean that you are expecting to split up. It's just a sensible way of entering such a huge commitment and making sure you are protected should the worst happen. The property in which you live is always going to be the biggest concern. And unless you were clear from the outset about the way in which you co-own, co-tenant, or co-occupy your property, then things can get pretty messy if the relationship hits the rocks. If your name isn't on the deed and there is no evidence of any agreement between the two of you, then it's going to be very difficult to claim an interest in your home. It would be very unwise for someone to make a significant investment unless there is a very clear understanding between the two people as to what interests they may have in that home. And if you have children together, consider what arrangement that you would want to put in place for their security as they grow. Avoid casual conversations. Don't assume just because you've talked things through that everything is going to be fine. All too often, people who have sadly lived their relationship on trust, when one partner betrays the other and terminates the relationship, that trust that you once had has turned out to be meaningless when it comes to any legal rights. On the other side of the coin, be careful about making promises, as that could be used as evidence of an agreement if you break up. Of course, relationships are built on trust, and it can be very difficult to bring the subject up. However, it is worth remembering that when things are rosy, everything seems fine, but the situation and the picture can change very quickly when the relationship turns sour. If things are not set out in an agreement, you will be relying on who said what and when. Then, if you end up in a dispute, then a judge will decide whose word is to be believed. That can end up very costly and very uncertain in terms of outcome, and therefore it makes a lot of sense to have honest discussions from the start so you both know where you stand on this. Couples often don't make these provisions. They don't realise the importance of having a legal contract. As the law stands, they are disadvantaged. There is no protection if one partner dies. There is no automatic inheritance rights. If the relationship ends, then division of property and pensions is not covered by current laws. Settlements out of court are better. What I very quickly discovered is just how many gaps there are in the laws. Firstly, in living together with no legal certificate, and secondly, in the process of having to make a complaint against my now ex-partner for gender violence while living in Spain. Fundamentally, it is women who are disproportionately disadvantaged in this scenario. And lawyers don't come cheaply. You can obtain free legal advice, but that advice offers no real answers. And then to actually instruct an international lawyer that will work between Spain and the UK, I was quoted £1,000 deposit and then advised that if they were to take on my case, the fees could be anywhere from £5,000 upwards. Money I just did not have and was not willing to commit to spending. Because the laws don't have specific remedies in cases like these, a dispute between two people who were previously in a relationship, for example, where the man is in control of the finances and a woman becomes wholly dependent, there is no law that takes into account any contribution that the women make in homemaking, caring, and in any other non-earning capacity. So the reality is that as it stands, the law is not fit for purpose. The gaps in the law have been likened to ravines. Of course, couples who decide to live together could opt to form a civil partnership, an option that is available to opposite and same-sex couples. By registering a civil partnership, it will give your relationship some legal recognition and added legal rights. Living together in Spain. Registering. Para de hecho. What does para de hecho mean? Roughly translated, it is official couple, and it is equivalent of a civil union. Basically, it gives couples many of the advantages of being married without many of the obligations. Each autonomous community has its own requirements for registering para de hecho, plus there are some legal qualifications. For example, at least one person in the relationship must be registered in the autonomous community where the union will be registered. Each person must also be legally single and not married or para de hecho to any other person. So each person has to prove they are divorced, legally separated, or widowed. You must not be related to each other, and you need to be over the age of 18. You need to show you have lived together for 12 uninterrupted months, plus you must be mentally capable of entering into the official relationship status. You should be aware that in Spain, the law does not currently automatically recognise a claim on property and assets between unmarried couples. So if you are going to reside in Spain as a couple living together, you should make the necessary plans to either register a formal relationship or actually get married. So that is just a short chapter in my next publication. After the discard, no divorce required. Now, as a volunteer with Surviving Economic Abuse, the UK charity who campaign to change the laws and improve the legislation, the current government are looking at how they can improve the laws for couples who live together. The thing is that in relationships that end where they're just living together, relationships, most couples can come to an agreement. It is important to realise that most relationships that end, if they're living together relationships, they can come to some meaningful negotiation, and when they separate, things are usually okay and each person moves on with their life. But where one person has a high conflict personality, then the end of that relationship can then escalate into post-separation abuse, which is exactly what happened in my situation. And so not having laws that protect the same as married women meant that I was doubly disadvantaged. For a start, I was given advice to file a gender violence complaint. And secondly, the lawyer who gave that advice wasn't the lawyer who represented me in the court. Situation quite quickly got out of hand. It's not that economic abuse is not included in the laws, because it is. It's just that it's not recognised when women make complaints. It's not something that is raised in the police or in the court. Under Article 3 of the Istanbul Convention, it defines domestic violence to include economic harm, and Spain is a signatory to the Istanbul Convention. Now, since I wrote that chapter, I've realised that while borders exist on a map, the tactics of an abuser are universal. Whether you're in the UK or Spain, the US, Canada, Australia, the discard often follows the same pattern, a systemic dismantling of your financial security. Now, in the UK, the Domestic Abuse Act 2021 as a landmark because it's finally named economic abuse as a statutory form of abuse. It recognised that controlling someone's ability to acquire, use, or maintain money is a crime of coercive control. Now, the reality check. While the law now sees the abuse, it doesn't always provide the remedy for cohabiting couples, and the UK still lacks a basic safety net. If you aren't married, you can be discarded from a home you helped build with almost no legal recourse to the assets you shared. And the Spanish perspective, the gender violence framework. Spain is often cited as a leader in Europe because of the Organic Law 1/2004. This law created specialised courts and immediate protection measures for women. The reality check. This system is highly effective for physical and psychological threats, but economic violence is often harder to prove in a courtroom that expects traditional evidence. For a resident like me who isn't fluent in the language, legal abuse can become even more exhausting as the system's bureaucracy is weaponized against you. What I've learned since 2021 and what I didn't fully grasp when I started writing is that no divorce required is a double-edged sword. It means an abuser doesn't need a courtroom to end the relationship, but it also means a survivor doesn't have any automatic protections of a divorce court to divide assets fairly. And the criminal law in both countries is starting to catch up to the reality of coercive control, but the civil and cohabitation laws are still lagging. We are asking women to leave for their safety, but we are failing to ensure that they have economic safety to actually survive once they do. So before I close out this episode, if these insights I've shared today resonated with you, or if you believe in the mission of highlighting the systemic gaps in our laws, you can support the continued production of this podcast through my Buy Me a Coffee page. Every contribution helps keep the platform independent and vocal. And for those of you currently navigating your own blank page or seeking a way through the fog of a post-separation transition, I do have a few openings available for mentor clarity sessions. These are dedicated spaces for us to untangle the complexity together, find your footing again. You can find the links for both in the show notes below. And until next time, remember, freedom is built one step at a time. Bye for now.